All right, strap in, everyone, because today we are going deep, like really deep.
Deep.
Yeah, we're tackling the origins and evolution of the universe and this whole concept of time.
Big one.
You guys have given us so much to dig into. We've got Stephen Hawking's A Brief History of Time in the mix. And honestly, I have a feeling things are about to get seriously cosmic.
Oh, yeah. Black holes.
A big bang.
Expanding universes.
Maybe we'll even touch on time travel. Who knows?
It's all on the table. But, what's fascinating is that our journey to understanding this universe, it wasn't a straight line. Like, way back in 340 BC, you had these ancient Greek philosophers, like Aristotle.
Right.
He was already making some seriously insightful observations.
I know. It's crazy how we figured out the Earth was a sphere.
Yeah.
Just by observing, like looking at shadows and stars.
He was a smart guy.
So smart. Like he saw that lunar eclipses always cast a round shadow on the Earth.
Right.
And he was like, wait a minute, if the Earth were flat, wouldn't that shadow be all stretched out and weird shaped?
Makes sense.
And then there's the pole star thing. He knew that the further south you traveled, the lower the pole star appeared in the sky. That wouldn't happen on a flat Earth either.
No.
This guy was basically mapping out the planet without ever leaving his backyard.
And the kicker is, he even tried to calculate the Earth's circumference.
Yeah.
Using those pole star observations.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, his calculations were off a bit.
A bit.
But the fact that he even attempted that with the limited tools he had, mind-blowing.
Totally. Okay, so we've got Aristotle setting us straight with the whole round Earth thing.
Round Earth, check.
But then, boom, Ptolemy comes along in the 1st century AD.
Oh.
And puts the Earth back at the center of everything. He came up with this super elaborate system of spheres carrying the sun, the moon, the stars.
The whole shebang.
But even his system had glitches, right? Like, remember that whole thing about the moon sometimes looking twice as big? Like, it was suddenly closer to Earth some nights. He had to come up with some pretty creative explanations to make that fit.
He did. And it's interesting how that Ptolemaic model stuck around for centuries, even with those flaws. It really shows how hard it can be to let go of those long-held beliefs, even when the evidence stacks up against them.
It's true. It wasn't until Copernicus in the 16th century that things really began to change.
Copernicus, yeah.
He's the one who proposed the heliocentric model, right? Putting the sun at the center of the solar system.
Boom. Revolution.
Talk about shaking things up. But he faced so much resistance.
Huge pushback.
But luckily, he had Kepler and Galileo backing him up with some hard evidence.
Hard evidence. That's what you need.
Exactly. Kepler with his elliptical orbits, finally making sense of all those astronomical observations.
Yep.
And Galileo observing Jupiter's moons with his telescope, proving that not everything revolves around the Earth.
Nope. Not at all. That was a major turning point,
I think so.
When observations started to outweigh dogma, it paved the way for a whole new understanding of the universe.
And that brings us to Newton, right? I mean, who doesn't love a good story about a guy and his apple?
Newton and his apple.
Okay, maybe the apple story is a bit of a legend.
Maybe.
But the idea behind it...
Genius.
He realized that the same force that pulls apples to the ground, gravity, also governs the motion of planets and stars.
That's reversal.
This was like a unification of physics, the laws governing the heavens and the laws governing us here on Earth.
All connected.
Connected by this one fundamental force.
Newton's law of universal gravitation. A game changer, no doubt.
Absolutely. But even Newton
Newton
struggled with some of the implications of his own theory, especially when it came to this idea of an infinite and static universe.
Yeah, the infinite static universe had some serious problems.
It did. Like, if everything is attracted to everything else by gravity, shouldn't the universe eventually just collapse in on itself? Newton tried to get around this by suggesting that stars were just evenly distributed throughout the universe, balancing out all the forces. But that explanation, well...
it didn't really hold up.
It didn't. And then you've got Olber's paradox.
Oh, yeah, Olber's.
If the universe is truly infinite and filled with stars, why isn't the night sky as bright as day? Every line of sight should end on a star, flooding the night sky with light.
It should.
The fact that it's not, well, it points to a universe that's dynamic, not static.
Dynamic?
A universe with a history.
A story to tell.
So even before we had hard proof of an expanding universe, people were already wrestling with the idea that the universe might have a beginning.
The beginning.
Thinkers like St. Augustine argued for a pretty recent creation based on what they saw as the progress of civilization.
Interesting.
But this idea of an eternal, unchanging universe, that was still the dominant view.
It was.
It took someone like Hubble to really shake things up.
Hubble, yeah.
His observations in the 1920s, groundbreaking.
Totally.
He figured out that most galaxies are moving away from us.
Away from it.
And get this, the further away a galaxy is,
yes,
the faster it's moving.
Faster it's moving, that's right.
But hold on, how did he even measure how far away these galaxies were?
That's the question, right?
It's not like he had a cosmic measuring tape.
He was clever, though.
He was.
He used this method involving a specific type of star called a Cepheid variable.
Cepheid variable.
These stars pulsate.
Like a heartbeat.
With a brightness that's directly related to their true luminosity.
Huh?
So by comparing how bright they appear to us
Got it.
with their actual luminosity, he could figure out how far away they are.
That is so clever. So by looking at these blinking stars, Hubble discovered that the universe wasn't just sitting there.
Nope.
It was expanding.
Expanding. It's like finding out the ground beneath our feet isn't static.
Whoa.
But constantly shifting.
That must have blown everyone's mind.
It did. And you know what? His observations actually lined up perfectly with the work of Alexander Friedmann.
Friedmann,
who, using Einstein's theory of general relativity, had already developed models of an expanding universe years before Hubble even made his observations.
No way.
Yeah. Friedmann even predicted that the universe probably came from this incredibly dense, hot state, what we now call
the Big Bang.
The Big Bang. So you have Einstein laying the groundwork with relativity, Friedmann predicting an expanding universe, and then Hubble coming in with the observational evidence.
Wow.
Talk about scientific teamwork.
That's amazing. But wait, didn't Einstein initially resist the whole expanding universe idea?
He did. Even Einstein, struggled to accept this radical concept.
Yeah.
He initially thought the universe was static and even added this thing called the cosmological constant into his equation.
A fudge factor.
A bit of a fudge factor to try and make his static universe work.
Wow. But he later called that his biggest blunder, right?
He did.
Even geniuses make mistakes.
It happens.
But what was it about general relativity that allowed Friedmann to predict an expanding universe in the first place? Like, how did he see that?
Okay, so this is where things get a little mind-bending.
Bring it on.
You ready? So general relativity describes gravity not as a force, but as a curvature of space-time.
Curvature.
Caused by mass and energy. Imagine like a bowling ball on a trampoline.
Okay.
It creates a dip, curbing the surface, right?
I'm picturing it.
Now imagine the universe is the trampoline, and the galaxies are those bowling balls.
Okay.
Their mass and energy warp space-time,
creating
these dips.
Right.
And that curvature
is what we feel as gravity.
Exactly. So instead of pulling on each other directly, the galaxies are actually warping the fabric of space-time around them.
Whoa. So general relativity shows that this warped space-time can expand or contract.
It can.
Depending on the density of all the stuff in it.
Or an energy.
And Friedmann, using Einstein's equations, figured out that a universe with a density like ours would naturally expand. And that expansion
implies a beginning.
No, right in the tape.
A point in the past where everything was incredibly dense and hot.
So the Big Bang wasn't just an explosion in space. Right. It was the beginning of space and time itself.
Space and time all starting from that point.
That's wild. But even with Hubble's observations, I imagine the idea of a universe with a beginning was still hard for a lot of people to accept.
It was. Alternative theories popped up.
Oh, really?
Like the steady state model.
What's that?
Trying to hold on to this idea of an eternal universe.
I see.
But then this other discovery happened, totally by accident, too. That really solidified the Big Bang theory. Have you ever heard of the cosmic microwave background radiation?
I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is.
It's basically leftover heat from the Big Bang.
Leftover heat, okay.
Yeah, in 1964, these two guys, Arno Penzias and Robert Wilson, they were trying to eliminate all this noise from their giant microwave antenna.
That makes sense.
They tried everything. Cleaned it, even shooed away pigeons.
Pigeons?
But the noise just wouldn't go away.
Uh-oh.
They finally realized that this faint, uniform signal wasn't noise at all.
Interesting.
It was coming from every direction in the sky.
So this noise, it was actually the afterglow of the Big Bang.
Exactly. The Big Bang Theory predicted that the early universe would be super hot and dense.
Right.
Filled with radiation. As the universe expanded and cooled, that radiation would stretch out, shifting to longer wavelengths.
Becoming microwave.
Becoming microwaves. Penzias and Wilson had stumbled onto this ancient light, a baby picture of the universe.
That is incredible. It's like having a time machine that lets us peek back at the universe's earliest moments.
It is.
So this discovery pretty much sealed the deal for the Big Bang.
It did. But we've talked a lot about the beginning of the universe.
We have.
What about those other mind-boggling things you mentioned?
Like black holes.
Black holes, yes. One of the most fascinating and extreme predictions of general relativity.
I've always been fascinated by black holes. These cosmic vacuum cleaners sucking in anything that gets too close.
Even light.
Even light. But wait, the idea of a black hole, something so dense that nothing can escape? That wasn't Einstein's idea, was it?
You're right. The concept actually goes back to the 18th century.
Wow, really?
John Michell, an English natural philosopher, was the first to propose them. He called them dark stars.
Dark stars.
He envisioned these stars so massive that their gravity would be strong enough to trap even light.
So the seeds of black hole theory were planted even before Einstein.
They were. But the journey from dark stars to our modern understanding of black holes, that took centuries.
It did.
It involved the work of a lot of brilliant minds. Subramanian Chandrasekhar, a young astrophysicist in the 1930s, he's the one who figured out that stars exceeding a certain mass.
Like a weight limit?
A weight limit, yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't resist gravitational collapse at the end of their lives.
So not all stars become black holes? There's a cutoff point?
There is. If a star is below that limit, it might end up as a white dwarf or a neutron star. Super dense, but not quite black holes.
I see.
But for stars above that limit, gravity wins. They collapse under their own weight, squeezing all their mass into an infinitely small point.
An infinitely small point? What do you call that?
A singularity.
A singularity. That's intense.
It is. But that doesn't mean black holes are infinitely small themselves.
Oh.
The singularity is at the heart of a black hole, but it's surrounded by this region of space-time that's warped beyond recognition.
And that's called...
the event horizon.
The event horizon. So that's the point of no return.
Exactly. Once you cross the event horizon, there's no escaping, not even for light.
Like a cosmic trapdoor.
A cosmic trapdoor.
Error.
But even with all this theoretical groundwork, the idea of black holes was still controversial for a long time.
Really?
It wasn't until the mid-20th century, with advances in astronomy, that we started to see real evidence for them.
But how do you even find something that's invisible? Black holes don't exactly emit light.
They don't. But we can see their effects on the things around them.
Like,
we see stars orbiting around these unseen companions that are way too massive to be anything other than a black hole.
Wow.
We see these powerful jets of matter and radiation shooting out from the centers of galaxies, powered by supermassive black holes, millions or even billions of times the mass of our sun.
So these invisible giants are leaving their mark all over the universe.
They are.
We can see their influence.
Exactly. And one of the best pieces of evidence comes from this binary star system called Cygnus X1.
Cygnus X1.
It's a powerful X-ray source.
Okay.
And the best explanation we have is that there's a black hole there pulling material off a nearby star.
So the black hole is eating a star.
Basically.
Oh.
And as that material falls in, it heats up to millions of degrees and emits X-rays.
So black holes aren't entirely black?
They're not.
Yeah.
They might be invisible, but they can leave a pretty bright signature.
That's amazing. This whole topic is mind-blowing. And to think we've only just scratched the surface of our journey into the universe.
We've only just begun. Next time, we're going to dive even deeper into the mysteries of the universe, explore how the Big Bang led to stars and galaxies, and we'll tackle some seriously mind-bending concepts, like Hawking radiation and the no-boundary proposal.
I am so ready for round 2.
It's going to be a wild ride.
We'll see you next time for part 2 of our deep dive into the universe.
See you then.
Okay, so we're back for more cosmic adventures. Last time we ended on those mind-boggling black holes, and honestly, I'm still processing the fact that they're not completely black after all.
Yeah, they're way more dynamic than we used to think, but
I bet.
Before we go deeper into those enigmas, let's backtrack a bit, back to the Big Bang.
Okay.
We know the universe had this incredibly hot and dense start.
Right.
But how did we go from that primordial soup to, well...
yeah, how did we get stars and galaxies?
To all this. to stars to galaxies.
It's kind of hard to picture, right? Going from that chaos to something so complex and structured.
I know what you mean.
Yes.
It's like, how does a symphony emerge from just noise?
That's a perfect analogy.
But within all that early chaos, there was order, a symphony, waiting to be, well, conducted.
Okay.
Conducted by the fundamental laws of physics. You see, in those first few fractions of a second after the Big Bang, the universe was this crazy inferno of elementary particles.
Got it.
Unimaginable temperatures, densities, the whole works.
Yeah.
But as it expanded, it cooled. And that cooling, well,
that's important.
Was crucial for everything. About 1 second after the Big Bang, the temperature dropped enough for protons and neutrons to start sticking together.
To start forming the first atoms.
Nuclei, yeah.
Well,
we're talking the very building blocks of atoms, just seconds after the universe begins.
That's wild.
And over the next few minutes, this crucial process happens. Big Bang nucleosynthesis.
Okay, Big Bang nucleosynthesis. I'm listening.
These protons and neutrons are combining, forming heavier nuclei.
Heavier.
Mostly helium, but also some lithium, some beryllium.
So all those elements we see today, they can be traced back to those first few minutes.
Exactly. The amounts we observe today match almost perfectly with what the Big Bang model predicts.
Wow. It's like a cosmic fingerprint.
It is. Proof that this whole Big Bang idea wasn't just some, random theory.
It's pretty amazing to think that we can look out at the universe today and see those remnants from billions of years ago.
It is. But that's just the beginning. The universe then was still pretty simple, mostly hydrogen, helium, a little bit of these other light elements, the heavier stuff, the things that make up planets.
Us,
exactly. That came later. Thanks to stars.
So stars are more than just twinkling lights. They're like cosmic factories, churning out the elements.
And make up everything.
So they're like giant fusion reactors.
Perfect way to put it. They keep the universe lit and create these new elements.
And it's not just helium, right?
No, not just helium. As they age, they start fusing helium into heavier elements. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen.
Wow. So the iron in my blood,
exactly.
The carbon in my DNA, it all came from stars.
You are stardust.
That's just...
But it gets even better. When massive stars die, they don't just fade away.
What happens?
They go out with a bang. A supernova.
So these stars explode.
And scatter all those newly created elements all across the universe.
So it's like death and rebirth on this grand scale.
Exactly. Death and rebirth, constantly evolving, recycling everything.
That's a beautiful picture. But even with all this, there are still some things the Big Bang model doesn't fully explain, right? Like, why is the universe so uniform? If it all started from a single point, wouldn't we expect to see more variation?
More variation, yeah.
In temperature, density?
Yeah, it's like baking a cake and having every slice be exactly the same, even though you didn't mix it perfectly.
A very uniform cake.
Exactly. And then there's the flatness problem. The universe's curvature, its geometry.
Right.
It's incredibly close to being flat.
Flat.
But why? Even tiny deviations early on should have been magnified over billions of years.
And created a universe that's really curved, like a sphere.
Yeah, or saddle-shaped.
So the Big Bang model needs some very specific starting conditions to end up with what we see today.
It does. And this has led to some pretty radical ideas.
Like
cosmic inflation.
Cosmic inflation. Okay, now I'm intrigued.
So imagine, in the very first fraction of a second, the universe expands exponentially.
Exponentially.
Inflating at an unimaginable rate. It's like blowing up a tiny balloon to the size of a planet instantly.
Okay, I'm with you. So this inflation smooths everything out.
Smooths out the wrinkles in space-time, explaining why everything looks so uniform.
And the flatness problem.
That too. Inflation would have stretched the universe so much that any curvature would be basically undetectable.
So inflation solves a lot of problems, but...
It does. But we still need to figure out what caused this rapid expansion.
And how did it stop?
Exactly. Inflationary theory is still a work in progress.
Okay, so inflation, a work in progress. But I have a feeling we're about to go even deeper down the rabbit hole now.
Yep.
You mentioned Hawking radiation and the no boundary proposal earlier. This is where things get really weird.
Right. This is where we enter the realm of quantum gravity.
Quantum gravity.
Where we try to unite Einstein's general relativity.
Which describes gravity on large scales.
Large scales with quantum mechanics.
Which governs the world of the very small.
Exactly. And this realm, well...
That's where physics gets really strange.
It does. We're talking about black holes, the singularity at the Big Bang.
Space and time themselves.
And it's here that Stephen Hawking really made some groundbreaking discoveries, starting with
Hawking radiation.
Hawking radiation, yes.
Okay, break it down for me. What is Hawking radiation?
Remember the event horizon of a black hole, the point of no return.
Of course.
Classical physics says black holes should be totally black, absorbing everything, emitting nothing.
Right.
But Hawking, using quantum mechanics, showed that that's not quite true.
Wait, so black holes aren't completely black. What are they emitting? How's that even possible?
It all has to do with the strangeness of quantum mechanics. In the quantum world, empty space isn't actually empty.
It's not.
It's full of these virtual particles.
Virtual particles.
They're constantly popping in and out of existence.
So particles that aren't really there?
Think of them as fluctuations in these quantum fields that are everywhere.
Okay, I'm trying to picture this.
Usually these virtual particles annihilate each other almost instantly.
Right.
But at the event horizon of a black hole, something else can happen.
Oh, I bet. What happens?
Imagine two of these particles popping into existence, right at the edge.
At the edge of the black hole.
One falls in, the other escapes.
So one gets sucked in, the other flies away. But don't they have to annihilate each other?
They do, but if one falls into the black hole, its partner has nothing to annihilate with.
I see.
It becomes a real particle, carrying away a tiny bit of energy from the black hole.
So black holes are actually leaking energy.
They are. They're slowly evaporating.
Wow, that's crazy. But if black holes can evaporate, what happens to everything that falls in? Information is supposed to be conserved, right?
That's the black hole information paradox.
Oh, here we go.
A major puzzle. Does information get destroyed when it enters a black hole, which would violate quantum mechanics?
Right.
Or is it somehow preserved, maybe encoded in the Hawking radiation?
So black holes are really pushing our understanding of physics to the limit.
They are. And they give us a glimpse into this world of quantum gravity.
Where the rules of space and time start to break down.
Exactly. And that brings us to another one of Hawking's ideas, the no-boundary proposal.
Okay, the no-boundary proposal. Lay it on me.
This is a radical concept. Instead of picturing the universe beginning with a Big Bang singularity, this infinitely dense point,
right,
the no-boundary proposal says the universe simply has no beginning in the traditional sense.
No beginning? Hold on, so you're saying the universe didn't just appear at some point in time?
In a way, yes. Imagine a universe with no boundaries, like the surface of a sphere, but with more dimensions.
More dimensions.
Time, in this picture, isn't something that flows. It's woven into this space-time. It's another dimension of this self-contained universe.
So the universe is, I'm trying to wrap my head around this, but if there's no beginning, does that mean there's no end either?
That's still up for debate. The no-boundary proposal doesn't really say anything about the ultimate fate of the universe.
Okay.
Whether it keeps expanding, collapses.
That's something else entirely.
We don't know. But you mentioned imaginary time earlier.
I did. Is that even something I can understand?
It's not as scary as it sounds. It's more of a mathematical tool.
A tool.
But it also offers a different way of thinking about time.
Okay, so how do we even begin to imagine imaginary time?
Okay, imagine a movie projector.
Okay.
It takes still frames and projects them rapidly to create this illusion of motion, of time passing.
Right, like the flicker of the film.
Exactly. Now imagine seeing the whole film strip at once, all the frames laid out.
Outside the flow of time.
Outside the flow of time. That's kind of what imaginary time is like.
So imaginary time is like seeing the whole history of the universe simultaneously. Yeah. No past, present, future, just all moments existing at once.
It's a simplification, but it captures the essence. In imaginary time, there's no distinction between past, present, future.
That is mind-blowing. But if all moments exist equally, what does that mean for free will?
That's where physics and philosophy collide.
They do?
Does a universe governed by physical laws leave room for genuine choice?
So we're left with a universe that's both deterministic and maybe open to free will.
A fascinating paradox. But we're really just scratching the surface of all this.
I have a feeling we are.
Yeah.
You also mentioned the arrows of time.
Right. Next time we'll dive into that.
Okay.
Explore why we experience time moving in one direction, why we remember the past, but not the future.
Why we can't see into the future.
Exactly. And whether this directionality is inherent to the universe.
Or just our perception.
Exactly. It's going to be a fascinating discussion.
I can't wait to unravel that mystery. Until then, everyone, keep those minds open.
Open to the infinite possibilities.
Welcome back for the grand finale of our cosmic deep dive. We've covered so much ground, from the ancient Greeks to quantum gravity and even imaginary time.
Quite the adventure, hasn't it?
It really has. But even after all these incredible discoveries, I keep coming back to one big question. Why is there something rather than nothing? Like, why does this universe even exist at all? With its laws of physics, its constants, its ability to create life and consciousness, it's a lot to think about.
It is the ultimate question. It's a question that has puzzled philosophers and scientists for centuries. And while our scientific models can describe how the universe evolved from a very early stage, they don't really answer why it's here in the first place.
So does that mean science just hits a wall when it comes to the why? Are we stuck with an unanswerable question?
Not necessarily. The search for a theory of everything, a unified theory that explains all the forces and particles in the universe, might shed some light on this.
Okay.
It might not give us a simple answer, but it could reveal deeper connections.
And principles.
Yes, principles that govern the very fabric of existence.
You mentioned string theory before. Could that be a contender for this grand unified theory?
String theory is definitely one of the most promising avenues of research. It suggests that the fundamental building blocks of the universe aren't point-like particles, but incredibly tiny vibrating strings.
So instead of tiny billiard balls, we have tiny vibrating strings. I'm trying to visualize this.
It's a shift in perspective, for sure. These different vibrations would correspond to different particles, different forces. It's an elegant concept, and it could potentially weave together all the forces of nature.
It's like music. Different notes, different vibrations, combining to create something beautiful and complex.
I like that analogy. But string theory, while elegant, also presents some pretty big challenges.
Like what?
For example, it requires the existence of extra spatial dimensions beyond the three we experience every day.
Wait, extra dimensions? You're not talking about parallel universes or something out of science fiction, are you?
Not exactly. These extra dimensions, according to string theory, would be curled up incredibly tiny, so small we can't perceive them directly.
So these hidden dimensions would be like tiny threads woven into space-time?
That's a good way to think about it. And while we can't see them, they would have a huge impact on how gravity and the other forces behave at very high energies, like those found in the early universe.
It's wild to think about, entire dimensions hidden from our view. But even if string theory or some other unified theory explains the how of the universe, does it actually answer the why?
That's a great question. A truly fundamental theory might show us that the universe is the only way it could possibly be.
Okay.
That the laws of physics, the constants, are so finely tuned that any other combination would result in a universe incapable of supporting life, maybe even existing at all.
So you're saying the universe exists because it has to, because the laws of nature demand it?
It's a radical concept, I know. It challenges our ideas of purpose and design.
It does. But what if that's not the case? What if the universe isn't the only possible outcome?
That leads us to the idea of the multiverse.
A multiverse.
The idea that our universe is just one of many.
Many universes.
Each with its own set of physical laws, its own constants. Some might be hospitable to life. Others might be completely different, governed by laws we can't even imagine.
So there could be infinite universes out there, like bubbles in a cosmic bath.
It's a mind-boggling concept, and still speculative, but it arises naturally from some theoretical frameworks.
Like string theory.
And eternal inflation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that our understanding of the universe is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
What we think of as fundamental might just be a tiny piece of something much grander.
It's enough to make you feel both tiny and insignificant, but also connected to something so much bigger than ourselves. Like we're these little specks of consciousness, aware of our own existence.
And trying to make sense of it all.
Trying to understand this universe that's far stranger and more wondrous than we ever could have imagined.
But we're part of it. Made of the same stardust as the stars and galaxies. Our very existence shows the universe's amazing capacity for complexity, for beauty, for life, for consciousness.
It's been an incredible journey exploring all of this from the very beginning of the universe to these mind-bending frontiers of physics. We've gone from ancient Greeks pondering the Earth's shape to grappling with extra dimensions and multiple universes.
And the journey isn't over.
It's not.
The quest to understand the universe, its origins, its fate, that continues. We're still searching for that elusive theory of everything.
The one that unlocks all the secrets?
Exactly. Who knows what we'll discover in the years to come?
Maybe we'll find proof of those extra dimensions or even a message from another universe.
It's a universe full of surprises. That's what makes it so exciting.
So for everyone listening, we hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity.
Inspired you to keep asking questions.
Keep looking up at the night sky. Keep wondering. Keep exploring.
The universe is waiting.
And until next time, keep those minds open to the infinite possibilities of the cosmos.